We're just getting started in this book, Welcoming the Stranger. In the first chapter, we've been talking about trying to raise awareness of what is going on in this country and in other parts of the world, as far as that goes, with people that are fleeing persecution, people that are fleeing physical harm in their home countries. And we're going to be looking at some of those stories today. We wound up last time, kind of at the bottom of page 5, if you have a copy of the book. One of the questions the authors ask is, for those of us who seek to follow Christ, in particular, face a challenge in sorting through the rhetoric to understand how we can reflect God's justice as well as His love and compassion in designing a national immigration policy in the ways that we relate individually to the immigrants in our communities. Well, I kind of paraphrased that question a little bit, and what I asked was, let me find my spot here. I lost my place. Okay. How do we sort through all this information that we hear and apply Christ-like justice, love, and compassion? That's kind of where the rest of this chapter heads towards. So we need to come up, I think, we need to come up with a more fair and effective system that provides security for those of us that are already here, as well as a decent chance for those that are seeking to come here in search of peace and greater prosperity. So I want to start reading on page 6, if you want to follow along. Kind of the second sentence there. On first glance at this issue, we recognize that immigrants are people made in God's image, who should be treated with respect, and at the same time, we believe God has instituted the governments and the laws that it puts in place for a reason, and that as Christians we are generally bound to submit to the rule of law. Many are left conflicted, unsure of what our faith requires of us in this pressing issue. Let's talk about that for a minute. What is it that you hear about immigration that is kind of played down, I guess is the best way of describing it?
But drugs coming in.
Yeah.
The people that are coming in.
When you talk about immigration, you don't hear about the people. What you hear about is the drugs, the crime, the misappropriation of assets.
You also hear about the rule of law, but they're not following
the rule of law. The threat of physical harm. The thing that's downplayed is the fact that what are these immigrants? They are people.
Last week they were refugees.
They are people, and just like us, okay. There are good people and bad people, okay. These immigrants coming here for whatever reason, there are good people and bad people, and there's a tendency to paint these people with the same brush, okay. So okay.
I had a thought last week.
Just last week?
Yes, I don't know how many millions we've already spent building a fence to keep them at home. If we took that money and gave it to them, water, food, shelter, jobs, they wouldn't want to come into the United States. They could stay at home.
Interesting you should say that. What's one of the things that was on the news that the president has decided to do about poorer countries, especially in the middle Central America? We're going to cut their aid off. If they're going to keep coming here, we're going to cut their aid off. Well, what was their aid accomplishing? Security, beefing up their police force, their drug interdiction forces. Yeah, I mean, and so...
Well, I don't mean to prosecute Trump, but he wants billions more to finish the fencing.
Yeah. Well, we're trying very hard not to get specific about these policies, but you're right.
The thing that is, my thinking was, if we would have helped them, instead of building that fence, they wouldn't want to come to the United States.
Well, hang on.
The problem you run into is you give these countries millions of dollars, but they give it to the top people. It never gets to...
A lot of it gets misappropriated, doesn't it?
And that's the problem.
The United States has had a problem, but the United States...
Another country that's here also.
Yeah, the United States has had a problem for years. We tend to support people that support our opinions, but those same people aren't the ones that care about their own people. And so we end up supporting people that steal the money or misappropriate the money. That's a whole other issue. like somebody used to say, it was Abbott and Costello, that's a horse of another color or something like that. I forget what it was.
Our individual feeling about these people probably is different when we actually get to know
Ding, 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 ding.
legal or illegal in this country.
Thank you for saying that.
Have a different feeling about what they are dealing with.
Thank you for saying that, because the rest of this chapter, well, most of the rest of this chapter, deals with introducing the reader to who some of these people are. Because I think a lot of us tend to see a faceless enemy, so to speak, a faceless threat, okay? I won't say a faceless enemy, but I think a lot of us, when we hear the term illegal immigration or aliens or asylum seekers, we don't put a face to these people. And the rest of this chapter is going to try to put a face. But let's read what, we haven't been in the Bible for a week or so here. Let's read a few things here. Let's look at Genesis 1:27. Genesis 1:27 says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created him. Well, so what? What's that mean? Human beings, male and female, are created in the image of God.
We belong to God.
Now we can screw that up, you know, we can ruin our lives, we can choose a life of criminality and robbing people and robbing stuff like that. But we all start off made in his image. And it doesn't say in here, made in his image, but we speak a different language, and so you can exclude some people, okay? It doesn't say in here we have different customs, but we do. The point of it is, we are made in God's image. And I think God wants us to treat humans humanly. That's what I get out of this.
Well, is that kind of part of the problem? These people come in here and want to bring their culture, and we want to keep our culture.
I know, but why is that a problem? I've heard lots of people say that. You know, it isn't that I'm opposed to immigration, it's just I don't want our customs to change.
If you want to live in our country.
Well, we are an amalgamation.
That might not be that might not be God's plan for us.
Yeah, I mean, when you read some of these later chapters, you'll see where decades ago, Irish people were considered a threat, and before them, Chinese people were considered a threat, and before them, Negroes were considered a threat. Okay, and each time we've worked through it.
We rounded up all the Japanese in World War II. We tried.
We tried.
But I mean, they were under surveillance.
Yeah. They were more than under surveillance. Some of them were incarcerated in detention camps. That's not exactly a bright point in our history either.
May I say something else, sir?
Yes, you can. You had a thought this week too, then.
A few hundred years ago, we were immigrants.
Thank you.
We killed the people in front of us.
Yep.
Put them in reservations.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of
Yet we don't understand other people wanting to come here.
Most of us, if we're into Ancestry.com and some of these family searches and stuff, all you got to do is go back 4 or 5 generations, and your ancestors were probably an immigrant.
In my individual family, now my mother's father's mother was German. My mother's mother's father was Irish. And my father's family, there is American, Indian.
Yeah.
So when we stop and think of it, we're a part of a lot of different cultures.
Absolutely. We are a blend of all these cultures.
That's what I say, I'm a Duke's mixture.
Yep.
And I don't know what all else there is. That's
Yep.
for one thing.
I have a little problem with some of this.
Okay.
The fact is, yes, we are all created by God and we are children of the Father. You know, whether we've accepted Him or not, we are from God. I believe that. And I feel like, and I would never treat anyone disrespectful because of their heritage or their lineage or their, you know, what country they were from. But I think when we talk about them immigrating here is a different situation, and you talk about giving them money, but we have so many people living on poverty level already here. And I feel like if we're going to give money, let's help the people that's here.
Yep. We don't do a very good job of helping the folks that are here, do we? Well, that was just a suggestion, and it's certainly one of the discussion points here.
Well, that's just true. In reading this book, you realize these people are being told things that are not true in this country. Now, just think of this little community right here. At least I've heard we have school children that are homeless. Now, that's not right to be going on with the money that's wasted in our country. But it's a fact. But now these people are just being painted a super story about our country that they get here and don't find everything to be what they were told.
Well, there's a myriad of problems, and we're picking it just.
And it's a problem.
We're picking at one issue, but yeah, there's plenty of different ways that tax money could be spent. Yes. Okay, let's look at, well, the point of this verse in Genesis is we may look different, we may talk in different languages, we may have different customs, but we all are created in God's image. Let's look at Colossians 1:16. Can't do this one-handed. For by Him all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him. What does this say?
Everything is God's.
God created everything, including what? Governments. Including governments, kings, rulers, presidents, prime ministers. Okay, and so when we rebel against elected authorities, in effect, we're rebelling against God's will. Now, we don't always agree with elected authorities, and that's one of the nice things about a democracy. If you can get enough people to agree, you can change things. But our last president, the jokes that were flying around when President Obama was president, some of them were cruel. And the jokes that are flying around when President Trump was president, some of them are cruel.
That's going on all through the different administrations. I mean, every president, there's always someone coming.
We as Christians need to remember that the powers that are elected because God wanted them elected, for whatever his reasons.
That's right.
Okay? And we may not agree, we may not think it's prudent, we may work real hard to change elected officials, and that's fine. But remember who put them in.
That they don't realize that they were elected to do God's work. They want to run, each party wants to run everything their way, and not for the good of their people,
Yeah.
but for what they want, and
It's real easy.
that's not pleasing to God. That's not what he has in mind.
No, it's real easy once you're in power to abuse that power. But the point of it is, it's wise to remember that God's in charge.
He knows what's best.
So, that kind of sets the parameters of our discussion, doesn't it? On the one side, you have immigrants that should be treated like people because they are created in God's image. And on the other side, you have leadership and elected officials that we should follow. We should respect the laws of the land. We should respect the rules of our elected officials. We should respect that. And that kind of sets up the dilemma we're in, doesn't it? The point of it is, I'm not disputing these facts, nor is the authors of the book. So, any other discussion before we move on? Yes.
Well, we're told to honor those who have the rule over you. And so how do you go about honoring anyone who has the rule over you? Because no one has the rule over you unless you give them the rule.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the governmental forces that work in our country, you would have to do something to them dishonorable to dishonor them. If you honor them, you don't have to oppose, you don't have to agree, you just don't get involved in whatever they're doing.
Well, go ahead and finish your thought.
We want to remember about your language whenever the people all came together in one language and decided to build the tower up to heaven. God is the one that gave different groups of people different languages so they could pursue their course of action.
He stopped it, yeah.
And today we're still pursuing that Tower of Babel. We're trying to find a way to get ourselves to heaven. And when we open this book, we call the Bible, that's printed in what we call the English language, we soon discover that it contains at least 4 different languages. Well, that creates a lot of confusion whenever you read those words and you don't realize you're reading our Arabic words and Greek words, and it mixed in with English, and so we're still working on that Tower of Babel, and that's what's going on down here. This book tells us that we are pursuing the Christian viewpoint of welcoming a stranger, but it doesn't go very deep into the Christian viewpoint.
Yeah, and I think the point they're trying to make is that when we call ourselves Christians, there's ways that we can, when you reveal yourself to your friends and neighbors, they're not going to listen to the words. They're not going to listen to what you say. They're going to judge based on what they see. And I think that's what the authors are trying to get here, is that if if you call yourself a Christian, then it's more than just Christian words, Christian thoughts. It is Christian actions. And
yes, but our words go a long way toward defining what someone else might think too.
yeah. Well, all good points. Let's move on. Said, I'm going to start reading second paragraph of page 6. Through the work of World Relief, the Christian ministry where we both work, it's a dual authorship, I hope you realize, where we both work, now I lost my thought here, on a regular basis, in churches, speaking to people about issues of immigration and citizenship, or in congresspersons' offices, talking with staffers about the need to fix the immigration system. Sometimes we speak in Spanish, or translation in Lithuanian, Arabic, Cantonese, or an audience of immigrants eager to nationalize or fearful of what a newly announced immigration enforcement policy will mean for them and their families. Other times we're speaking in front of predominantly non-immigrant church groups, answering questions about immigration policy. When we're in front of an audience of non-immigrant evangelicals, or before congressional staffers who are helping our political leaders form immigration policy, we find that many are asking the same question we have often asked ourselves. This book seeks to address some of the most common questions and misconceptions that we and other Christians have wrestled with as we consider the immigration, quote, problem. This book is written out of our own personal experiences with this dilemma, tracing through such an investigation. Much of the investigation, our own questions have led us in seeking to understand immigration policy, and more important, immigrants themselves, through the lens of our faith. While it would be disingenuous to pretend that we do not have strong opinions about how we as individuals or as the church or society should approach this issue, our foremost interest is not to convince you of the virtue of any particular piece of legislation. Rather, we hope this book will encourage our sisters and brothers to take a step back from the rhetoric and combine a basic understanding of how immigration works and has worked in the United States with a biblical worldview. We do not believe there is one Christian prescription to solve the immigration issue, though there may be decidedly unchristian ways to view the issue. There is plenty of space within the church for charitable disagreement on issues such as this. What do you think? Is this, I think the bottom part of page 6 kind of forms what the author's goals are for this book, is to kind of encourage us to view this issue from a Christian perspective and form your own opinions. It's not necessarily to change opinions, although some opinions could stand to be changed. Any thoughts before we move on? Yes?
Well, whenever we talk about the immigrants on the southern border, there are some things to remember. And one of them is the border. On this side of the border, we have some fence, and on the other side of the border, there is no fence that we know of anyway. And in between those fences is a space called no man's land. We have a place just a little bit down the road here from us that has an interior fence and an exterior fence, and between those fences is called no man's land. And that's never a good place to find yourself unless you are authorized to enter into no man's land.
Especially when everybody's got a gun.
And that's the place that I'm not going to enter into. I've been in no man's land down the road here, but that down there on the southern border or up on the northern border, that's one place I will never enter into.
I was going to save some of this for a little later, but let me just read a piece of it right now because it kind of fits in with what you're discussing. We have approximately a 1,933-mile southwest border that runs through Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, all the way over to California. There is a gap where there is no fence at all of approximately, let me see if I can find it again. Okay, it says two-thirds of that 1,933-mile southwest border is not divided by any man-made barrier. Now, the wall that our current president wants to build for $5.7 billion is to extend existing border fencing by 215 miles.
That's not quite right.
We're fighting over 215 additional miles when there's 1,933 miles, and two-thirds of that is currently no man-made barrier at all. The majority of the gap is in Texas, where the Rio Grande acts, Rio Grande, I think is how it's pronounced, acts as a natural obstacle of sorts, and swaths of private land extend to the international line. In Texas, 91% of the state has no fence or wall. 36% of New Mexico has no fence or wall. 18% of Arizona has no fence or wall. California's border with Mexico has all but 23 miles fenced to some degree. I thought that was interesting.
I used to live in El Paso. I haven't been there for quite a while. They talk about El Paso being a very safe city and all that. I only have one question. If El Paso is a safe place to live, why don't they have bars on all the houses that are not occupied by Chicanos? and they have enough money to survive. They have one of the requirements is to have bars on the windows so nobody enters. And I just got a problem with that. I have bars on my house here. I don't have any fear about anybody coming in.
You go to Nashville, Tennessee, you'll find a lot of houses with bars on the window too. Yeah. It is an attempt to feel safe. We want to feel safe.
You know, another thing that bothers me a little bit, I see the Muslims, for example. We have one, in Congress now, and she has a lot of pull. Well, she's making a lot of commitments. Recently, I'm sure you know, a guy in trouble with wanting to give Israel a bad time. Well, that's one of their main targets. And I think when they come here, they got to. It seems to me that we ought to have the majority of the people in America at one time were for certain things, and we were a Christian nation. But I think we're being pulled further and further away from that. I know when I was a kid, the fear was the communists. But what they were supposedly going to do was integrate our schools, the educational system. Well, I don't know. How do you think they're doing so far? Our education system is having a lot of trouble. I think we have to be a little bit careful. When we invite anybody in, why are they coming? If they're coming here and they're going to change us to be just like them, why don't they just stay home?
We will read about that. We will read about why they're coming here.
Well, I know they got good reason to leave their country.
Yeah.
But another place in the Bible, I can't tell you exactly where it is, that when they were in wars and God directed them, I'm fairly sure, to kill every man, woman, child, even the suckling children. Maybe we got the wrong religion. Maybe we ought to take another look.
You're trying to draw me off base here, but let's talk about that. Why did he tell those people, why did he tell the Israelites to kill every man, woman, and child and animal? What had offended God? What had offended God that those people, he told them to kill everybody that was already in the land?
I can't off my head, I can't tell you.
Idolatry. Idolatry.
Well, why was there a little child? He could already be adopted into that.
Well, think about what the Old Testament said, because if they live among you, they will lead you astray. They will lead you astray. You'll end up marrying their daughters and sons, and before long, idolatry will be in your midst. Okay, so when God said to destroy them, you can't use that same instance and say, well, by anybody that worships different from me, I should kill them too. I mean, that's taking something that's in the Bible and twisting it around.
But if you're going to kill all the men, women, and even the animals they kill. But why with a little baby he hasn't done anything yet.
He grows up.
So, why should he be put to death?
They grow up.
Yeah, sure he grows up. But if you leave him and say you take him out of that environment, you just kill the parent.
Yeah.
The child should still be forgiven, don't you think? I mean, have a chance at least.
Yeah. That was for a specific circumstance in trying to find a homeland, a promised land that he had made the promise to Abraham years ago. That was in an effort to provide them with a piece of land they could call their homeland. That is not the same thing as we have going on in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona.
Okay, that's true. But when we bring these people over, like the Muslims, for example, we put them in and into our legal system.
The Muslims are already here.
Oh, they're going to change it. They're going to change it like Israel. You can kiss them goodbye. And you know, that's sort of where our religion started. So we'll be a little careful about it. We think a lot of that.
Well, basically what you're saying is, I won't have any choice about who I worship because this Muslim's going to convert me.
Eventually, when they take up, when they get enough power, you're right.
Yeah. Paul.
There's 109 verses in the Quran that speak of destroying anybody that's not a Muslim.
Yeah.
And some are quite graphic. They include chopping the heads off of anybody that's not a Muslim. They include chopping off the fingers and to kill infidels. This is a very dangerous thing to bring into our country.
There's
Hey, they're the most honest people as far as stealing anything. Boy, I guarantee you they will not steal anything.
Melvin, we're out of time. What you got?